What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and this is going to be my post-game analysis video for the Indianapolis Colts versus Miami Dolphins. It was in Lucas Oil Field. It was a home game for the Colts. There's a lot to talk about, and so I'm going to get right into it. Obviously, the very first and most important thing is that we got to win. We got a W, so hell yeah. Because again, I'm not one of those people that wanted to go 0-16, did not want to be the worst team to ever exist, so on and so forth. It looks like we're skating off that. Thank God for that. And we got another W. We got another win, and that's super huge. I want to get as many as we can. And look, down the schedule, there are some winnable games against the Jets and the Bengals, maybe the Giants. We'll see what happens in a home game against the Bills next week, right? So there's definitely some winnable games, but that by no means takes away from the fact and reality that this organization is intentionally tanking. Now, at the end of the day, this game came to, first of all, I heard, some people were saying that the Colts are kind of playing up and down to competition or whatever. So whatever, take that with a grain of salt, take that for what you will. It doesn't really matter. I would say though that, as far as like penalties and officiating goes, that wasn't really much of an impact in the game. It was rather inconsequential. I would say that I was right, though. It was a pretty low-scoring, defensive-heavy game. Both offenses were pretty bad, actually, at the end of the day. I would say that, the Colts certainly, definitely struggled immensely on offense, particularly in the first half with Jacoby Brissett, Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton being out. I mean, that's huge. I totally get it, though. They need to make sure they rest those guys, especially Brissett. You don't want to get him, extra hurt. So there's that. But, definitely they were feeling the pain there without question. So that was a pretty major factor in this game. Also, I mean, this Dolphins team overall, man, the players for damn sure are proving game in and game out that they are playing their asses off. And it's, I believe personally that it's a lot more for their own careers and their own film and tape and so on and so forth than it is the coaching staff or any of that shit. So, but that's, from my perspective. Obviously, I don't talk to these guys, but that's, how I see it. Also, as far as, and I'm going to get into some specific examples here, but the coaching staff and the decisions they made. So in the beginning, in the first half of the game, I was giving them credit. If you watched, my live stream, if you were with me, I was giving them credit because they made decisions that I liked that showed a level of aggressiveness. Now, one of them they failed in. There was two specific things that I'll mention in a minute. One of them was a failed attempt, but I still liked it because it was a situation in which, it was smart aggressive, right? And so those were examples where I gave the coaching staff credit and was like, look, yeah, finally, we have a couple examples where they actually did some aggressive things that made sense, right? That were smart, and one of them paid off, one of them didn't. But you can at least take the one that didn't pay off and be like, okay, but at least it was it was a good position, it was smart to do it, and you might as well put the pedal to the metal. I'll get to those in a second. But in the second half, they went right back to making some questionable decisions. Now, at the end of the day, was it inconsequential? Yeah, it didn't really end up mattering, and I'll get to those examples of what I'm talking about in a second. It didn't end up mattering. We ended up winning the game anyway, so that ended up being just kind of a wash, but it does add to the pile of evidence that the coaching staff is subtly trying to put this team in a position to be to fail, to be unsuccessful, right? So, but real quick, I'll go ahead and get into before I really get into my analysis though of this game and so on and so forth. I want to do a quick roundup of some other notable things across the league. So first and foremost, first and foremost, the the Jets managed to squeak out a win today against the Giants. Both teams are not very good, whatever. But they won 34-27. So the Adam Gase, Sam Darnold Jets managed to notch another win under their belt. They are now 2-7. We are also 2-7. So tied for, third, fourth, whatever in the division. But yeah, so they squeaked out a win. That was something, right? Also, the Bills did drop a game today. They're 6-3 now. They dropped a game to the Browns, which is interesting. We're about to go play the Bills next week, right? And we do play the Browns later on. So the Browns are now 3-6. The Bills are now 6-3. I do think we'll probably end up losing to the Bills next week, but we'll see. I mean, these players are certainly giving it their fucking all. And it just depends. I mean, they have a really good defense. It is a home game for us, so there's that. But they do have a really good defense, but their offense is also struggling pretty hard. So, and, we'll see how that game goes. And again, I mean, but they are a pretty good team, and they are going to certainly try and push for a playoff spot. And I do think ultimately they will end up coming away with that win. But, we'll have to see in any given Sunday, right? So we'll see how that plays out. But that I thought was interesting. Also, I did watch the Steelers game because that was on. I got to watch that on my phone. It was blacked out on DirecTV, but I did get to watch that game. They played the Rams. Both teams are now 5-4 because the Steelers came away with the victory. My sister is a Steelers fan, so whenever we don't play the Steelers, I root for them to win. I am like an honorary Steelers fan. And then also, full disclosure, I'm an honorary Texans fan, if you will, too, or fan by association, I guess is a better way to put it, because one of my best friends is a Texans fan. So when we don't play for him or play them, I'm rooting for them to win. Now, obviously, that just so happens to coincide with the first round picks that we have going into this upcoming draft. And so when those teams win, we obviously, our draft positioning gets hurt, which it's in dire straits right now. I mean, frankly, like I said, I don't really care. I've been consistent this entire time. I care about winning games, right? So I want my team to win games. And again, that's the most important thing coming out of our game. I don't care about the draft positioning. It's how you pick, not where you pick. But we'll get into that, more in a bit. Right. But also, again, the teams that I'm like a fan by association of or whatever, like I want them to do good, right? So my sister's a Steelers fan. We've always been really close. We're best friends. So again, when we don't play them, I root for them. So I want them to get the win. Texans, same thing. One of my best friends is a Texans fan. Want them to get the win. We don't play them, right? But also, I'm a Minka Fitzpatrick fan, and he balled the fuck out. Okay, so now on the season, he has, since going to the Steelers and actually being used at free safety where he should be, it looks like the Steelers, especially with the way that, they have a chance to, down the stretch, get some wins, especially with this upset against the Rams, right? And so they could sneak into the playoffs with a wild card position. And right now, as it stands today, with the Dolphins win, we are now 4, right? Pick number 4 in this upcoming draft. Now, the Steelers going into this game were high teens. Okay, and now there's definitely a bunch of winnable games. If they manage to sneak into the playoffs, I definitely expect the Texans to make it to the playoffs. I think they're going to win their division at the very least, especially with the Colts just losing and now being like a game and a half, 2 games behind them. That means, and especially also since if we end up beating the Jets, right? Because if this coaching staff and this regime, this organization goes out and proves that they're really trying to win like they say, and they do win, even though there is substantial evidence to say that on-field decisions by this coaching staff are putting us in position to lose, and this team was systemically designed to lose, despite that evidence, if they really are trying to go out and win, which again, to me, all the credit goes to the players, and I give them all the credit for this game, not the coaching staff, because again, at best to me, their decision making was a wash. It was good and they deserve credit in the first half. Not so good in the second half. I'll get into more on that again in a minute though. But anyway, so draft positioning. If we beat the Steelers, if we beat the Jets again, if we beat the Bengals, maybe we beat the Giants, right? They're not a very good team. Maybe we beat the Bills next week in a little bit of an upset. I don't think so, but regardless though, there are definitely some winnable games for us. Right now we picked number 4. So we could very easily win some games and fall out of the top 5. Maybe even the back end of the top 10. Who knows? Maybe even out of the top 10 if we won enough games, right? If we won, let's say, because we're at 2 wins right now. Let's say we beat the Jets, the Bengals, that puts us at 4. Let's say we beat the Giants, that puts us at 5. And maybe we squeak one out against the Bills or someone else, and that puts us at 6 wins. That would be awesome from my expectation that we were going to go 0-16 based off all of everything. So it's not the regime and the coaching staff that's proven me wrong on that. They're trying their damnedest to make us as bad as possible. But the players are proving that no, they're not on board with this and they're going to fight for their pride and their careers and so on and so forth. But anyway, if we fall, out of the top 5 or whatever, and then if the Steelers pick is, high teens, low 20s, or somewhere in the 20s. I mean, because if the Steelers get into the playoffs, there's a substantial chance that they actually could even push into the playoffs a little bit, right? So if the Steelers get like the 6th seed and the Texans are like the 3rd seed or whatever, 3rd or 4th seed, then, the Steelers could end up, they would have to play one of the, like the 1 or 2 seed or whatever. So whatever, and Mason Rudolph in that offense are having their struggles for sure, but they could maybe even win a game. Maybe the Texans win a game. Either way, point is, if then we end up having our other 2 first-round picks be in the 20s, don't put it past Stephen Ross and this organization from trading away not all, but a substantial amount of our draft capital to go up and get that quarterback, because Stephen Ross made it clear that the entire goal, right, is to go get a quarterback. So they can actually, kind of get like a save from the players that they have. Now, there are actually some bright spots on, specifically on the defense, most notably. The offense is going to need a lot of work. But there are some bright spots for sure on this defense, most notably. And a couple on the offense if, like, Preston Williams comes back all right and maybe Mark Walton will do something for us at some point, blah, blah, blah. We need an offensive line and a quarterback, more receivers, more running backs, what have you. So we need help everywhere. But, there are potential building blocks. But don't be surprised, though, if they trade away a chunk of that to go up and get a quarterback. Because, again, Stephen Ross made it clear, and that was part of the reason why Adam Gase was fired, because he wasn't going to tank the season to go get a quarterback. So, again, they could sort of kind of like, they're trying to, it's right now, and again, if the players do keep producing and squeak out some wins, then they kind of, this organization kind of like stalls the inevitable and kind of like what I perceive to be the inevitable, and kind of saves face a little bit, right? Because they can get some wins, right? They're trying to win. They can get some wins. The team can fight out and grind out some wins for them, but then they can still get their quarterback of the future by trading away a lot of that draft capital. That is a very real possibility. That would be a terrible decision, because then they get rid of some of the... Now, for me, if we were to get the number 1 pick, which actually is starting to look relatively unlikely at this point, if these players keep doing what they're doing. I mean, we're getting injured. Christian Wilkins and Jerome Baker had some stuff going on. This team is very, very injured, so we definitely have to monitor that going forward. But if they can squeak out some more wins, then that obviously changes that. But I would say, you know, if we did get the number 1 overall pick, I would take Chase Young. With our second pick, I would get an offensive lineman. And then with our third first-round pick, I would get, you know, a skill position player, either, you know, a wide receiver or running back on offense, or a corner or safety on defense. Real quick, also, Minkah Fitzpatrick is putting together, with 5 interceptions now, 2 fumble recoveries, and 2 touchdowns, putting up a Defensive Player of the Year resume. Bruh, he is balling. And he won that game for the Steelers. His scoop and score got him, you know, part of their 17 points. And he had the game-sealing interception. So, I mean, the Steelers are winning that trade hands down. But again, a stupid decision. Anyway, so we'll see how they play it out. But, so that's how I would do it, personally, right? Chase Young, but again, that would depend on us getting the first overall pick. I would take Chase Young, and then I would get a quarterback in the 3rd round. I would not, you know, whatever. And then in the 2nd round, I would continue to fortify my offensive and defensive lines, right? So that's how I would handle the draft with the picks we have right now, right? In the first 2 rounds, fortify your offensive and defensive lines. Maybe get some skill position guys on you know, preferably on offense, but, you know, best player available, because offense, we need more help. And then in round 3, then go get a quarterback, and, you know, then maybe even take one late round in the 7th or something. Or maybe take one as an undrafted free agent, right? Again, my philosophy, never take a quarterback in round 1 or 2, but take one every year in round 3 or later. And then build in the trenches. That is most important. Anyway, so if they did that, though, then you lose. I mean, you lose out on a lot of potential opportunities, and there's so many holes to fill that, you know, you need as many chances as you can get. So that would be a terrible decision. Obviously, that's months away. We have to wait and see how that plays out. We still have to wait and see how the rest of the season goes. Do we get more wins? Blah, 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 whatever. So there's still a lot of unknown. But foreshadowing, that would be a terrible decision, because it would massively be neglecting the offensive line for sure. And then also it would be proving that you're not really like trying to smartly accrue draft capital and then build through the draft. You're just trying to, you know, chase certain prospects with a bunch of draft capital, which is not the way to go about it, right? People wanted to use the Cowboys as an example of a team that tanked. They didn't tank. What they did was they traded back in the draft, right, and accrued more draft capital, took more shots, right, didn't chase players, but then they were also good at drafting, right? And they have hit on a lot of their picks, right? So, especially their first rounders. So, and Dak Prescott, their quarterback, their franchise guy, was taken in the 5th, I believe. Maybe the 6th. 5th, I believe, though. Right? So, not an example of a tanking team, but they did it right. Right? I disagree with Jerry Jones in a lot of ways, but he did that in his, you know, organization did that right in a lot of different ways. So, way different. Way different. And so, you know, it would be a disaster if that's what they did. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Moving on. So, real quick, the Arizona Cardinals did lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 30-27. However, Kenyon Drake did have another good game. So, another Dolphins player that is performing well and succeeding in another place. You know, Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills are doing well for the Texans. And Frank Gore is doing well for the Bills. Right? You know, Vincent Taylor just recently moved up from their practice squad to the active roster. You know, and then also, let's note that Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans beat the Kansas City Chiefs today in an upset, 35-32. Ryan Tannehill is now 3-1 as the Titans starter. He has firm control of that team. And again, look, at this point, anybody that says Ryan Tannehill is a bad quarterback is just denying reality for what it is. His stats prove you wrong. His Dolphins records prove you wrong. His NFL record proves you wrong. And when he's with, a solid team, he can do great things. And he dominated in that game. He was awesome. He had an amazing game. And they overcame and they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, 35-32. So, like I said, people can deny it and say what they want, but it's just false. It's inaccurate and it's not reality. So, that's what I got for that. Now let me get back to, that's my roundup of other things. Obviously, some of that stuff is just, players and coaches, right? Because I am a Tannehill fan. Cameron Wake is on the Titans as well, right? So I'm fans of them, of those players, and I want them to do well. But I did also, let me note that I was right when I said that at some point, Ryan Tannehill was going to fucking take over from Marcus Mariota and be the starter for that Titans team. And he was going to perform well. And now he's 3-1 as a starter. And he gave him a chance last week. They just played, who was it? Was it the 49ers? They played a good team last week. And he gave him a chance, man. He really did. No, it wasn't the 49ers. It was the Panthers. It was a good It's a good Panthers team. Solid overall Panthers team. Christian McCaffrey is a MVP candidate. And he kept him in it. They only lost that game 30-20. Not terrible. But the Titans are 5-5 now on the season. And 3-1 under Tannehill. So, and again, but that goes back to none of this was necessary, right? So, and that plays to the overall point, right? Is that, for the first time, we were actually starting to do things right in the Gase era. I know everybody hates that, but we were. He was paying the players that were proven in-house. They had a good few drafts. Some of the bright spots on this team are guys brought in by Adam Gase, like Mike Gesicki, right? For example. So, and a lot of the guys that are performing elsewhere are Gase guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Kenyon Drake, right? And even Gore and was a Gase guy. He was brought in by Gase, performing well for the Bills. Tannehill was a Gase guy. He wasn't drafted by Gase, but Gase actually was like the first coach that Tannehill ever had that actually really believed in him. And, he performed for him when he was there. But he chose to, pay the players in-house. Focus on the draft. He got rid of the bloated contracts in free agency. By the way, again, and Chris Greer already said they're going to spend big in free agency. So if they did trade away a bunch of that draft capital and then just blew all of our cap space in the offseason to get, overpriced free agents, that's going to be a massive failure. But that is overwhelmingly where the evidence is pointing towards, especially now looking like we actually might win a few games and then, to get the quarterback of the future, blah, 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 we will have to make a move like that. Anyway, so let's get into it though. Real quick, let me give you the injury report. Center Daniel Kilgore remains on track to return, and he did. Kilgore has missed the past 3 games with a knee injury, was listed as questionable when the Dolphins released their final injury report of the week. Kilgore was limited in practice all week. He was listed as doubtful on the final injury report last week ahead of the game of the Jets. Evan Boehm, who moved out from guard to take Kilgore's place at center in the starting lineup, also was listed as questionable. He's a full participant in practice Friday after being limited the previous 2 days. Also listed as questionable were defensive tackle Devon Godshaw, who was limited all week with a shoulder injury, and defensive end Avery Moss, who has missed the past 3 games because of an ankle injury. Moss was also limited in practice all week. Safety Rashad Jones with a chest and cornerback Ken Webster with an ankle. Both were ruled out. On Friday, the other 10 players who appeared on the injury report this week did not receive a game status designation, meaning they'll be available for the Colts. Those players are safety Walt Aikens, guard tackle Jesse Davis, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, wide receiver Jakeem Grant, linebacker Trent Harris, cornerback Chris Lamont, safety Bobby McCain, long snapper Tabor Pepper, defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, and wide receiver Albert Wilson. And again, in this game, Christian Wilkins, Jerome Baker, they had some scares, so we'll have to monitor that. We are getting more and more injured. The Colts ruled out 2 players Friday, both of them wide receivers, T.Y. Hilton with a calf and rookie Paris Campbell with a hand. Again, major blows to their offense. Starting quarterback Jacoby Brissett was listed as questionable with a knee injury. He practiced limited in a limited capacity all week. Obviously, we do know he was ruled out. Another major hit. Also listed as questionable were cornerback Pierre Desir with a hamstring, who's apparently their top corner, and he was ruled out for this game. So a major hit on their defense, although that wasn't as big of a deal. Again, it was a pretty defensive heavy game. And cornerback Quincy Wilson with a shoulder. Neither practiced either Thursday or Friday. So that's the injury report. The inactives for the Dolphins were wide receiver Gary Jennings, safety Rashad Jones, cornerback Xavier Crawford, cornerback Ken Webster, tackle Isaiah Prince, center guard Keaton Sutherland, defensive end Avery Moss. Let's also note that there were actually reports like just the other day that the Dolphins tried to trade Rashad Jones to the Steelers before agreeing to Fitzpatrick. So, you know, I mean, again, they didn't have to. They didn't have to. And that trade is looking even stupider and worse as the weeks go by. So, I mean, again, we'll have to wait and see how the rest of it goes. But there were reports. And so, look, I mean, it's getting to the point where, to me, it's pretty inconceivable that Rashad Jones remains with this team. You know, possibly even after this season. He could very well end up being gone after this season. So we'll have to see how that plays out. You know, I think that would be a shame, but, you know, it is what it is. So that's the injury reports and the inactives. Let's get into this actual game now. So we did win. We are now 2-7. The Colts are 5-4. We won 16-12. Again, like I said, I was actually right. I didn't really have a score prediction. Because again, the things that I was paying attention for were, you know, players that are potential building blocks, and how well do we perform against the quality of, you know, or how well do we perform against our opponents, and what quality of opponent are they, right? So, I mean, this was a win. It was a hard-fought win by the players, but, you know, at the end of the day, the Colts are, you know, maybe an average team, right? And their offense definitely super struggled having those 3 key players out, Jacoby Brissett and T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell. So that was a major factor for sure as well. And so, but, you know, maybe once they get those guys back, they do end up rebounding, which is definitely possible, right? So that was a major thing. And like I said, but I was right. You know, I made like a vague prediction that it could possibly be like, you know, a low scoring game, defensive heavy, and I was right. Based off of the information I had, that is how it ended up playing out. So, you know, as far as the stats go, well, before I get into stats, let me talk about some other things. So like I said, I mean, there was a couple bad officiating. There was like a no pass interference call on Devontae Parker that probably should have been called, but they didn't throw a flag. Whatever, it's football. There was also a bad roughing the passer penalty on the Steelers at some point. I can't remember the specific play, but like I said, I mean, overall the officiating was, you know, inconsequential, really at best, so whatever. But I do want to talk about the Colts were completely robbed of a touchdown, and it's because of the stupid fucking catch rule. And to be fair, we did get 3 interceptions in this game, but one of them, the Stephen Parker interception, which he got off of, you know, the robbed touchdown to Eric Ebron. I mean, it was stupid. Like, because it's just the rule is garbage. Like, Eric Ebron caught the pass. Okay, he went to the ground, was down in the end zone, still having control of the ball, and while they were on the ground, Stephen Parker stripped the ball from him, and then they called it on the field an interception and a touchback. but why? But the reasoning was because he wasn't able to make a football move. Are you fucking kidding me? He's being tackled and going to the ground. He has firm possession of the ball, is down by contact before the ball comes out. And how is that not a fucking catch? And who fucking cares about the football move? Like, really? Like, the way that the rule is written is just garbage. So they were definitely robbed. Gotta be completely fair, right? Totally objective, because I am. I'm objective, I'm fair, I'm honest, and I give you the facts as they are with the best absolute analysis that I possibly can. Now, again, I need to get soon, hopefully, I'm gonna get the software that is gonna allow me to be able to like record clips and stuff, whatever. I'll start putting, the interviews on the back end of my videos again. And I'll actually be able to put clips in my videos to show you these things. Unfortunately, I can't right now. I can't afford it, so I'm not able to. But you can go back and look at it yourself. I'm sure you can find, highlights, if anything. There's definitely video of it out there. I retweeted, in fact, because the media was talking about it. They're like, yeah, the Colts were robbed. And they were robbed of a touchdown. And so that also helped to shape the game. So, I guess a little bit officiating kind of hurt the Colts or whatever, but they were definitely robbed. Also, let's real quick, again, so there was, as far as the coaching went for the Dolphins, the coaching and decisions they made, there was a tale of two halves. In the first half, there was a 4th and 3, that it was on the goal line, or, it was like 3 yards away from the goal line. We were in scoring range. Obviously, a chip shot, field goal, whatever. But we were up at by 10 points at that point in the game, 10-0. Okay, and it was 4th and 3 on the goal line, and they made an aggressive call to go for it and try and get the score. Now, it failed. It didn't work. But that is an example to me, and credit to the coaching staff. That is a good time, a smart time to be aggressive. Why? Because you're up by 10 points. They're super deep. So even on a turnover downs, it's, I guess in essence like a punt. So it's no worse than a punt at worst. Sure, you could have gotten the 3 points, but as you see, we ended up winning the game anyway. So that ended up being inconsequential in that way, right? And so I like that call. So credit to them for being aggressive in that way. There was also a 4th and short. I think it was also like a 4th and 3, but it was 4th and short for sure, where they went for it and they got it, right? And that was an aggressive, successful attempt. But out of like all of the aggressiveness that has been shown by this coaching staff, the vast majority of it has been a failure, including one in this game, and most of it though has been like an utter disaster in its level of failure, right? We lost games because of it, right? So the Steelers game and the Washington Redskins game, right? We lost those games because of that. Also, real quick, there was at one point a clear pass interference on Ryan Lewis that wasn't called, but whatever. I mean, like I said, the officiating overall was inconsequential, although, I guess maybe it leaned a little bit more in the Dolphins' favor overall, but rather inconsequential. But, just pointing it out, gotta be fair, gotta be objective. But then, so like I said, in the second half, there was just some massively questionable decisions. So it was late in the third quarter. There was about 1:13 left. Okay. It was the Colts were inside the 20-yard line on our side of the field. It was 3rd and 13, and we decided to take a timeout. Now, again, at the end of the day, this is inconsequential to the end result, but it could have been, because if the Colts came back and like maybe they would have taken the lead, we just randomly out of nowhere at the very end of the third quarter decided to take a timeout. We still had 2 more after that. And so again, it ended up being inconsequential, but why? Why? Why are you doing that? Why give him a breather? Why give him an opportunity? Why waste a timeout when there's absolutely no reason for it? And there is potential that you can maybe need it down the stretch. Why? It's just, at best, again, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. Also, in the second half, the play calling on offense was hella conservative, and they ran the ball way too much, especially when we were being proven to that our run game was shit. Especially, they kept giving it to fucking Kalen Ballage, who was doing absolutely nothing for us, hasn't all season. So why, at least, and to be fair, Patrick Laird at the very tail end of the game got like 2 or 3 carries and didn't get much with it. But maybe give Myles Gaskin or Delance Turner a try. You had 4 running backs active for this game. Why not give him some of these other guys a chance when Ballage clearly does not have a hot hand, right? So, and we had, so I'm going to get into the stats in a second. We had 70 rushing yards on the day, but 23 of that was from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Kalen Ballage was only, I think, 2.2 yards a carry. So why? Just massively questionable, right? But again, at the end of the day, I'm just going to call the coaching staff's decisions a wash because they kind of balanced out. In the first half, there were some good aggressive calls that were smart. One of them worked out and one of them didn't work out. But even though that one was a failure, it still was a smart way to be aggressive in that situation. But in the second half, then there was more evidence to throw onto the growing pile of they are trying to put us in a position to lose or, have less success or give the other team an opportunity. So again, at best, mind-boggling. So let's get to these stats. We had 229 total yards. Our offense, like I said, at the end of the day was actually pretty bad overall, and our defense really carried us. We had 229 total yards. They had 300. We had 159 passing yards. They had 191. We had 70 rushing yards, but again, 23 of that was Ryan Fitzpatrick running for his life. And our only touchdown came off of a Ryan Fitzpatrick run. So, and they had 109 rushing yards. So our average drops. We were 150 going into this game per game. So it's going to improve again. But it's still another 100-yard game, rushing game by the opposing team. So our rush defense is still not very good either, overall. We are improving, and again, some of the biggest bright spots like Raekwon McMillan, Vince Beagle even, right? I was bashing the Dolphins for that choice and getting rid of Kiko Alonso. He has actually been rather quiet for the most part throughout the season, although made some headlines today with some plays. But he's certainly far more proven as a commodity than Vince Beagle. But to be fair, Vince Beagle has shown up in some ways. Jerome Baker, hopefully he, can avoid some injury, whatever. So there are some bright spots. Obviously, we know Xavier Howard is still here. And while he's not active and stuff, and he's on injured reserve, we do hopefully expect him to be part of the future. We got Bobby McCain. The defense, like I think is, we certainly need to massively boost that defensive line. And then we do need some more help in the secondary. We need for sure a safety. We need for sure a starting corner. Probably could use some more, linebacking help. Although I would say the linebackers is probably where we're the strongest with McMillan, Baker, Vince Beagle, Sam McGuavin, right? But we still do need a lot on the defense, and not just starters, but backups as well, right? And depth. So, but we certainly need far more on the offense. We need an entire offensive line. We need a quarterback. We need at least 1 or 2 receivers. We need a running back or 2. Maybe Mark Walton will be it. Maybe Patrick Laird. I don't know. Delance Turner, who? Like, Gary Jennings, who? Right? Like, so we'll see. Anyway, going on though. We were 3.7 yards per play, so obviously garbage. They were 4.3. We had one fumble. They didn't have any. We had one interception. They had 3. Although, again, one of them, the Stephen Parker one, shouldn't have counted. And it should have been a touchdown for the Colts. The Bobby McCain interception, good on him. It was definitely an overthrown pass by Brian Hoyer, but definitely good play on the ball by, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And off the top of my head, I forget what the other one is, but I'll remember when I get down to the defensive statistics. So we were 37% on third down, obviously not very good. They were 38. Again, though, all of this shows that it ended up being a pretty defensive heavy game. We won 16-12, low scoring, blah, blah, blah. Low third down conversion rates, turnovers all over the place, not a lot of yards, so on and so forth. We had the ball for 31 minutes and 28 seconds. They had it for 28-32. We had 4 penalties. They had 3. And the passing game, Ryan Fitzpatrick was 21 for 32, 63.6% completion percentage, 169 yards, 1 interception, and a 63.8 passer rating. Brian Hoyer was garbage. He was 18 for 39, 46.2% completion percentage, 204 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and a 38.8 passer rating. Although, again, to be fair, one of those interceptions shouldn't have counted, and they should have had another 7 points. So, the reasons why we won this game, the Dolphins played really hard. Coaching was a wash, kind of neutral. Officiating, mostly inconsequential, although maybe leaned a little bit in the Dolphins' favor, but really just inconsequential, let's be honest. And then it was a defensive heavy game, but our offense outplayed their offense. And, they really, really, really felt the missing pieces of Jacoby Brissett, T.Y. Hilton, and Paris Campbell. So, but all of that, like I said, is massively important context. So, but let's go on. So, Kalen Ballage had 20 attempts, 43 yards, and a 2.2 average. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 4 rushes, 23 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 5.8 average. So, he was the best thing that our rushing game had. Without his 23 yards, we would have only had 47 yards on the day, right? So, and without his touchdown, we wouldn't have had a touchdown at all, right? So if we didn't have that touchdown, drop that, we would be down to 9 points. And if they had a touchdown that they got robbed of, they'd have 19. So it could have easily been 19-9, right? So, but obviously that's not how the ball rolls, and that's not how the cookie crumbles in this one. But I love that because, again, I want the wins. Marlon Mack led the way for them in rushing, 19 attempts, 74 yards, and a 3.9 average. Jordan Wilkins had 3 rushes, 20 yards, and a 6.7. Nyheim Hines had 3 rushes, 14 yards, and a 4.7 average. Devontae Parker led the way for us in the receiving game, 5 for 10, 69 yards. Allen Hurns, 2 of 4, 32 yards. Mike Gesicki, 3 of 6, 28. Jakeem Grant, 2 of 2, 15. Patrick Laird, 2 of 2, 15. Eric Ebron led the way for them, 5 out of 12, 56 yards. Jack Doyle, 3 of 4, 44 yards, and a score. Chester Rogers, 2 of 4, 31 yards. Zach Pascal, 2 of 7 for 26 yards. Mike Gesicki had a fumble, and he lost it on our first drive. Brian Hoyer had a fumble, but did not lose it. Defensively, Jerome Baker led the way for us. 7 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. Nick Needham had 5 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 1 interception, and 3 passes defensed. Raekwon McMillan had 5 solo tackles and a pass defensed. Vince Beagle had 5 solo tackles. Eric Rowe, 5 solo tackles, 3 assisted, and a pass defensed. Bobby McCain, 3 solo tackles, 1 interception for 32 yards and a pass defense. Let's see. Charles Harris, 3 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 1 tackle for loss. Sam McGraven, 2 solo tackles, 1 assisted, and a tackle for loss. Let's see. The John Jenkins, 2 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Jamal Wiltz had 2 solo tackles and a pass defense. Stephen Parker, 2 solo tackles, an interception and a pass defense. Again, that's the one that should not have counted. Let's see. And Ryan Lewis had 1 solo tackle and a pass defense. Altogether, again, the Dolphins defense definitely kept us in it. We had, let's see, we had 3 interceptions, 9 passes defensed. Again, some of that, one of those interceptions for sure shouldn't be there. But 3 interceptions, 9 passes defensed. We had 1 sack, only 1 sack, and 3 tackles for loss. So our defense definitely kept us in that for sure. For the Colts, Darius Leonard was all over the fucking place. He led the way, 11 solo tackles, 2 assisted, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, an interception for 1 yard, and 2 passes defense. Motherfucker was everywhere. Kari Willis had 7 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 1 tackle for loss. Kenny Moore had 5 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, and a fumble recovery. Rock Ya-Sin had 4 solo tackles and a pass defense. Grover Stewart, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 1 tackle for loss. Bobby Okereke, 3 solo tackles, 1 assisted. Justin Houston, 3 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Jabal Sheard, 2 solo, 1 assisted, 1 sack. Marvell Tell, 2 solo, 1 assisted, and 1 pass defense. Danico Autry had 1 assisted tackle and 2 passes defense. Overall, they had a 1 forced fumble, a fumble recovery. They had 1 interception, 6 passes defense, and then 3 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. So again, defensive heavy, and depending on how a couple things played out, if their offense played better and if they didn't get robbed of a touchdown, and if, you know, well, I mean, even just that, I was going to go further and say if Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't get his, but even keep that, you know, even if they didn't get robbed of the touchdown and that was another 7 points, that would have been 19-16, right? So if a couple things, and if their offense just played better in general, right, a couple things could have gone differently, and it could have very easily had been a loss for this team. And so again, this coaching staff and regime is lucking out because they're having some things bounce their way, because their players are playing for their careers and their contracts and so on and so on and so forth, right? So they're lucking out, but they are very much all the proof is there that they are doing everything in their power to ensure they get a quarterback high in the first round. Now, with the wins, I mean, honestly, if I'm keeping it real, with the way that they positioned themselves with all the cap space and the draft capital, honestly, losing games overall would be more beneficial to that ultimate plan. Because again, if they end up trading away a bunch of that draft capital and then just blow all of our money in free agency, that's not going to be the way to build a team, and it's going to end up being a failure. Because we've seen it time and time again. And again, the one example of a team that tanked, legitimately tanked, even though not to the degree that we have in the NFL, is the Browns. And they barely squeaked out a win today. Late minute drive by Baker Mayfield to pull them ahead 19-16 over the Bills. That could have very well had been the ending score of this game for us, 19-16. Anyway, so moving on. Jason Sanders was perfect today. 3 of 3 on his field goals with a long of 48. 1 for 1 on his extra points. Adam Vinatieri was 2 for 2 on his field goals with a long of 39, but missed his extra point. So obviously that, you know, one more point that they left on the field in that regard as well. So again, their offense, although technically that's special teams, but, you know, it's the extra point on a touchdown. Anyway, Matt Hawk had 5 punts with a 45.4 average. None inside the 20, though, with a long of 55. Rigoberto Sanchez had 4 punts with a 43 average, 1 inside the 20 with a long of 54. There were no kickoff returns by either team. And in the punt game, Marcus Sherrills had 2 returns with an 8 average, a long of 10. Chester Rogers had 3 with a 12.7 average and a long of 21. So, that is the breakdown for the Indianapolis Colts versus Miami Dolphins. Again, to me, this game came down to the heart and passion and drive of the players. The coaching staff gets a wash in this game as far as I'm concerned. Officiating, overall inconsequential, and defensive heavy game, low scoring, and it very easily could have been a Dolphins loss, but the players played their fucking hearts out. Our offense outplayed their offense. Defenses were pretty even overall. They were pretty evenly matched comparatively, and our offense outplayed theirs. They had some really key injuries on their offense that certainly played into that. But we are massively injured as well. So that's that. But at the end of the day, our draft positioning was hurt with us now being in the 4th slot, with the Steelers being, I'm not sure exactly what they're at, but high teens, early 20s, and the Texans pick being in the mid 20s as it stands now. So there's that. But again, of course, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care about that at all. I want the wins. I want the wins. I want the wins. And it's not where you draft, it's how you draft. So we'll see how that plays out. And yeah, that's all I got, man. So look, I'm looking forward to another game next week. Hopefully we can squeak out a win at home against the Buffalo Bills. Split the series with them. That would be awesome. But again, you know, for that game, we're going to have to see, you know, how do we play against a pretty good team that has a really good defense, but has an offense that's kind of, you know, hit or miss, struggling a bit. It's a home game for us. We got to continue to monitor our injuries. We got to continue to monitor to see, you know, what players could possibly be, you know, carryovers and building blocks. And do we get more wins or not? And then obviously monitor the draft positioning, and then subsequently the draft itself and how we are active, or, you know, how we're going to be active in free agency. So, yeah. That's how I'm going to end it, guys. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Make sure you share my channel and my videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I'm out. See y'all soon. Phins up.